Hi, this is Neil Few. Now, this is a little presentation for BIM students, just explaining to you some of the different ways in which you can get into teaching after your degree, because it's a fairly complicated situation at the moment, and there are lots of different routes available to you, and people often get a bit understandably confused about it. So, before you get onto any postgraduate teaching qualification at all, there are some requirements before you're able to go and get on them. Postgraduates, in other words, you're going to do it after your degree. So, you're going to need your degree. You're going to need at least a 2-2, and some courses will expect you to have a 2-1 as well. The BIM PG cert you can do at a 2-2. You will also need, and again, for some courses you actually have to have them at the beginning of the year when you apply. For other courses, you just have got to have got it by the end of the year when the course finishes. But you're going to need your level 2 qualifications in literacy and numeracy. You're also going to need a level 2 qualification in science if you want to teach in primary. And for most people, a level 2 qualification is GCSE. So basically, you need your GCSE grade C or above in English and in maths at the very least by the end of the year that you do your teacher training qualification if you want to go and work in schools or FE colleges. Wales, interestingly, actually just started asking for a B as well. If you haven't got those qualifications, don't panic, because what we've certainly had experience of in the past is quite a few people have gone off and they've done their GCSE over the course of the year while they're doing their PG search with us. The other question you need to ask yourself a little bit is, where do you actually want to go and teach? Which sector do you want to teach in? If you want to teach in schools, then right now you need to have some kind of qualified teacher status, in other words, a professional teaching qualification to teach in either primary or secondary schools, unless those schools are private schools or free schools where you don't actually need a teaching qualification to teach there, although obviously most schools would still want you to have one, it's not legally required. In the FE sector, it's currently up to each different FE college whether they require you to have qualified teacher status or not. It was brought in that it was going to be compulsory, that everyone teaching an FE had to have a teaching qualification. That lasted about 3 or 4 years, and then the last government abolished the rule. So right now there isn't a legal requirement that you have to have qualified teacher status, but clearly it's a massive advantage, and some colleges do require it because they're allowed to. It's up to them. At university level, if you want to teach at university level, then actually you don't need any teaching qualification whatsoever, although interestingly some universities are now beginning to bring it in, but just in terms of their own in-house training programs. However, you will need a postgraduate degree, generally these days a doctorate, a PhD, and stroke or extensive professional experience. So for most BIM students, it's very unlikely that you would start your teaching career at university. You might want to work up to it, but you would probably need to go and do further training or get further professional qualifications before you were able to do that. Now, there are two different kinds of teaching qualifications in the UK, and there's going to be loads and loads of acronyms in this presentation, so I just wanted to explain what all these different letters mean because they can be really confusing to people. So the first teaching qualification is called QTS, which stands for Qualified Teacher Status, and historically this was the qualification that school teachers used to get before they went and taught in schools. There's another teaching qualification which is called QTLS, which stands for Qualified Teacher Learning and Skills, and historically this was what people used to get if they were going to go and teach in FE. Very sensibly, in 2010, they brought in the rule that actually both qualifications essentially give you exactly the same training, so let's not have a separation. So now either qualification allows you to teach in both schools and in FE, so it makes no difference now really whether you have QTS or whether you have QTLS. Having said that, the only one slight difference that we are finding, but this is going out year by year, is when QTLS first came in for schools, a few schools were a bit unaware really of what was going on, but there's been a good education programme for schools now, so they do realise that QTLS is indeed absolutely the equivalent of QTS. Now, if you want to gain QTS, we don't do this at BIM. The best place to go and look and start exploring is to look at getintoteaching.education.gov.uk, and then if you scroll down the page, have a look at the link on Explore My Options. Under Explore My Options, it'll tell you all about the different subjects that they're looking for in schools at the moment. It'll tell you about your different training options, and it'll tell you about the different ways in which you can get your courses funded. From there, I would particularly look into training options, because this lays out the fact that basically, if you want to get QTS to teach in schools, there are two different training routes. There's a university-based route and there's a school-based training route. Whichever way you do, courses tend to be full-time for a year. You'll be on placement for at least 24 weeks of the academic year. You are largely in school. Most generally, you would have placements in two different schools and at different key stage levels. And you will be paid either a grant if you're doing the university-based version, or a small salary if you're doing the school-based version. The reason you get paid is because basically you will be absolutely working full-time as if you were a teacher for that year, and you can't expect to be doing anything else, and you cannot expect to be taking on any other paid employment because it just won't be possible. For my money, and this is just a personal opinion, I think you're much better off going the university-based route rather than the school-based route, because I think the evidence is pretty clear that this leads to much better training. One of the reasons for that is that you'll actually understand why the theories that you're using work. You'll understand the theory behind what you're doing. The school-based one tends to be more of an apprenticeship, and you learn to do lots of things, but you don't necessarily understand really why you're doing them. And I think that's not such good training. The acronyms come back in here again. So when you read ITT, ITT just means initial teacher training by whichever route you do. PGCE is the postgraduate certificate in education, and that'll be referring to the university-based courses. If you go to university, you'll get a PGCE, postgraduate certificate in education, and that will generally come with QTS, your qualified teacher status. You definitely want to do a course that has the QTS included, because the QTS gives you the qualified teacher status to go and teach in schools. SCIT is the school-centred initial teacher training route. So that's when you're doing your course based in schools. And again, you want to make sure that the course involves QTS. Now, none of that we do at BIM, okay? So your other option is to get QTLS, Qualified Teacher Learning and Skills. And the way that that works for anyone who's going through that route is you'd apply for it after you've successfully completed your postgraduate certificate in learning and teaching, say the one that we do at BIM, or any other adult education course. No universities or no trainers are going to give you the QTLS because that's actually handled by a separate national body, but it is a very straightforward process to get once you've got your postgraduate certificate. BIM's PG Cert is validated by the University of Sussex, and it's worth 60 credits at level 7, which is master's level, and if you want to, you can then go on to complete the full master's in learning and teaching. The BIM course lasts for a year. Once you've done that, and then you want to get your QTLS, that's normally something that people do on the job. So people would finish the BIM course, go into employment, and then be looking to gain their QTLS in the first year of employment. That process is managed by a group called the Society for Education and Training. And what you do is you undertake a process of what's called post-qualification professional formation. And that looks for two things. First of all, it looks for your ability over that first year of teaching, for how effectively are you actually using all the skills and all the knowledge that you gained while you were training to be a teacher. So it's like, okay, you've done your course, great, you've got your qualification, right, let's really see you put it into practice. And then the other thing is that they've come up with a really very, I think, very good set of occupational standards required for a teacher, and you have to show that you can meet the standards. So in that sense, it's a little bit like passing your driving test. You know, there's a standard and you have to show that you can meet it. Now, if you want to get further information on QTLS, I would go straight to the Society for Education and Training. So there's the URL for all the information about going through professional formation. And also, this is quite helpful, there's some information for head teachers, because occasionally, as I say, not all head teachers have completely caught up with what's going on here. So that's a really helpful little page. And it's interesting for you to read as well, because it will, you see how it's being explained to teachers in schools. The process works fairly straightforwardly. You apply once you've got your PG Cert, and remember that at this point you do also need to have your level 2 qualifications in literacy and numeracy. You have to just literally scan in your certificates, in fact. There's, I think, 3 different entry points during the year. So there's little 4-week windows where you apply, and then basically you have 6 months to complete it once you've applied. And what you do is you complete an online workbook that shows that you've met all the expectations of the 2014 Professional Standards Framework. You're then assessed on the workbook that you submit and 2 references. Generally, you'd ask someone who taught you on the PG Cert to give you a reference, because you want a reference from one of your teacher trainers, and then you'll have a reference from someone wherever you're working. And this process will cost you £485. Now, I'm quite keen on this because I really think that they've done a good job with developing the right sorts of professional standards for teachers. And they're in a number of different areas. So first of all, there's your professional values and attributes, which is about developing your own judgment about what works and what doesn't work in your teaching and training. I think this is really important. Some teacher training courses basically tell you what to do. What we try and do with you at BIM is we teach you to think like a really effective teacher, and therefore you will be developing your own judgment. I might say, by the way, that the BIM PG Cert has been designed around all of these values, so you will be exposed to them all and trained in them all in the year that you're with us if you choose to come to BIM, so that you'll be very, very well prepared to gain your QTLS afterwards if you want. Not everyone does. Quite a few people, to be honest, have graduated from the PG Cert and found that they can go straight into employment just with that, and they haven't bothered with QTLS. It would depend a little bit on, as I said earlier, on what you want to go in to do, but rest assured you will be very well prepared for it. So this is things like reflecting on what works best in your teaching and learning to meet your diverse needs of your learners, or evaluate and challenge your practice, values and beliefs. It's really good stuff. The next area is your professional knowledge and understanding. So that's stuff to do with maintaining and updating knowledge of your subject and maintaining and updating knowledge of educational research, so that what you do, how you teach, is actually based on evidence, which is fantastic. And then in professional skills, there's all sorts of stuff here about motivating your learners. It's really practical stuff, this. Planning really effective lessons for your learners, using technology, whatever. So basically, in your workbook, you will reflect a bit on what you do, and then you will give some practical examples of the things that you actually do to put all these things into action. If you're interested in the BIM version of getting to the point where you can apply for QTLS, then I would tell you that for BIM graduates, it runs for a year. There isn't a grant for this yet. Now, there isn't, apart from the PGCE, there really aren't grants for postgraduate education at all. Masters, PhDs, people tend to mainly have to self-fund. The government is now thinking of bringing in grants for postgraduate education, but they haven't arrived yet. What most people do is they apply for what's called a career development loan, and you can find information about career development loans there. It's basically like having a student loan, but as a postgraduate. The BIM course is designed to be very flexible. Most people are doing paid employment while they're on it, which is one of the ways in which is different from a PGCE. And again, like any school-based course or any other kind of course where you're getting qualified teaching status, you will be spending a lot of time during the year in classrooms, on placements at BIM and elsewhere. And we do have an excellent track record of students loving the course, being really satisfied by the course, very satisfied with the quality of the training they get, being very successful at the end of it, and gaining employment. And often, actually, local employers are genuinely quite stunned at the quality of people who leave the BIM PG Cert. It probably sounds a bit arrogant to say that, but honestly it's true. And we've had several people who've become course leaders or heads of department within a year or within 2 years, which is basically unheard of. So we have a really good track record around that. Towards the middle or end of this academic year, if you're in BA3, you will be getting the option to come to a presentation about the BIM PG Cert and find out more about it then and ask any questions you want. But hopefully this little presentation itself will have been helpful in just explaining to you some of the different options, because as you'll have seen now, there's lots of different options of getting into teaching, and give you the resources of where to go now to go and have a little further look at them. So good luck, and I hope to see some of you on the PG Cert.